Today, we're going to explore a completely different kind of battlefield. It's one where wars are really won and lost, not with bullets and bombs, but with plans, money, and ideas. So let's just dive right in. When you picture a war, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it tanks rolling across a field? Soldiers hunkered down in trenches? Well, what if I told you the most important battleground isn't a physical place at all? You know, the battles that truly shape our world are often fought in conference rooms, on factory floors, and yeah, even in the pages of newspapers. This is what we're calling the unseen battlefield, where strategy, economics, and information decide who really wins, often long before the first shot is even fired, and for decades after the last one. So to really get a handle on this, we're going to look at three incredible moments in history: the rebuilding of Korea after the war, the huge strategic debates of World War II in the Pacific, and the information war that honestly helped win the American Revolution. Then we'll pull it all together. First up, let's talk about the war after the war. And there's no better example than the Korean Peninsula. Okay, so after the Korean War ended in 1953, the peninsula was just devastated. It was split in two, and two completely different visions for the future were put into motion. In the South, you had the US and the UN stepping in to help rebuild. In the North, you had the Soviet Union and China lending a hand. It was a true clash of ideologies. Two totally different blueprints for how to build a nation from the ashes. Now, here's where the story takes a turn you might not expect. You'd probably assume the US-backed South just took off like a rocket, right? Well, that's not what happened, not at first. In the 7 years immediately following the armistice, North Korea's industrial output grew at a staggering, mind-blowing average of 39% per year. They were completely blowing the South out of the water. On paper, their strategy looked like a massive success.
But here's the thing about the war after the war. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And the long-term result couldn't be more different. You've probably seen that famous NASA satellite photo of the peninsula at night. It tells you everything you need to know without a single word. South Korea is just this brilliant sea of light, a beacon of life and economic power. And the North, it's almost pure darkness, a void.
So the takeaway here is absolutely crucial. South Korea's strategy, while slower at the start, put it on a path to becoming a global economic powerhouse. North Korea's early success, it just wasn't sustainable. It led to the isolated, impoverished state we see today. The real winner wasn't decided back in 1953. It was decided by the decades of economic and political strategy that came after. All right, let's move on to our second case study. This is the fight over the map during World War II in the Pacific. So the head of the U.S. Navy at the time, Admiral Ernest King, had this brilliant analogy. He saw the war as a 4-round boxing match. Round 1, just cover up, right? Survive the enemy's first few punches. Round 2, start looking for openings, a chance to counter. Round 3, that's when you start counterpunching hard with one hand while you're still defending with the other. And finally, round 4, when your opponent is gassed and you're at full strength, you go all out. It was all about a patient, calculated buildup of force. And that patience was critical. Just look at the U.S. Navy's losses around Guadalcanal in late 1942. In just a few months, the Navy lost 40% of all the aircraft carriers and an incredible 57% of all the heavy cruisers it would lose in the entire war. This was the period of parity, a total knife-edge fight where one bad move could mean losing everything. This incredible danger fueled one of the biggest internal battles of the war, the fight over the actual map. General MacArthur was pushing for a southern route through New Guinea to make good on his famous promise to return to the Philippines. But the Navy argued for something else, a direct drive through the Central Pacific to capture the Marianas Islands. Why? The Marianas were the whole ballgame. From there, the new long-range B-29 bombers could finally reach the Japanese home islands. This wasn't just a squabble over geography. It was a fundamental clash over how to win the war itself. For our final example, let's jump in a time machine. We're going way back to a war won not with bombers, but with pamphlets and pure persuasion. The American Revolution. Let's be honest, the American colonies could not defeat the British Empire by themselves. No way. They desperately needed help, and the obvious choice was Britain's biggest rival, France. The only problem? How do you convince an absolute king to back a democratic rebellion? Well, that called for a totally different kind of battle, a really sophisticated information warfare campaign fought in the salons and printing presses of Paris. And this was the media landscape they were dealing with. You had the official state newspaper, the Gazette de France. You had other papers that were quietly supported by the government, which could float a more pro-rebel story. And then, crucially, you had these foreign Dutch-based papers that were written in French, which could get around all the strict French censorship. The American diplomats had to learn how to play this complex game.
And wow, did they do it brilliantly. Diplomats like Benjamin Franklin basically became rock stars in Paris. They translated and handed out documents like the Declaration of Independence. They made sure to highlight every single rebel victory to make the cause seem winnable. And they even tweaked the wording of some texts to make them sound better to the French government. It was an absolute masterclass in shaping opinion to get what they needed, that critical French alliance that would ultimately help them win the war.
Okay, so we've looked at 3 very different conflicts from 3 different eras. Let's bring it all home. Each of these stories teaches us something vital. Korea shows us that the long-term economic strategy after the fighting stops can be what defines the real winner. The Pacific War proves that the internal fight over the strategic plan can matter more than any single battle at sea. And the American Revolution is the ultimate proof that a war of words can win you the friends you need to actually achieve victory. So, victory is rarely just about what happens when 2 armies clash. It's about vision, it's about planning, and it's about the battle for hearts and minds. It's a powerful reminder that whenever we look at any conflict, we should always stop and ask ourselves, where is the real battlefield?